Today we have Andrew Morrison on the Success or Excuses podcast. So Andrew, rather than me doing any fancy introductions, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, thanks very much, James, and great to be here in the East End of Glasgow, where my late father came from and grew up. So back at my roots almost here. So I sold a business that was called AM Bid that I started in 2014, and I sold it in 2023. And that was a business that helped organisations to win bids and tenders. Mm-hmm. Before that, I had a career in bidding. I used to manage most of the bid function at British Gas. Before that, my career was in local government. Mm-hmm. So I've kind of been on both sides of things, as it were. And then since selling the business and sort of working through a transition, period and exit from the business, on the 1st of July last year, I set up a new business called Business Sale Basecamp. Mm-hmm. And that business helps business owners to get their businesses ready for sale.
Wow. So I want to start there, right? I want to start there because this is something that, I'm 8 years, we were 8 years and 2 weeks ago was our 8th birthday. So we're in that right now, we're in that sale mindset, right? But we're actually thinking about going down the employee ownership route. What advice would you give me if I had to say to you, what would you say? What's the things that I need to look out for or...
So I think employee ownership is obviously a very good way of selling your business as well. It is a way that I chose not to take as it happens, but it is a way that many people are doing. There's certain, tax benefits to that as well. You may have to wait a bit longer for your money though, depending on if the employees that are going to be, becoming owners of the business, whether they're wanting to maybe put equity in or be prepared to take on, a bit of gearing so as they can pay you quicker. But usually business owners, gradually give up parts of their business through an employee ownership model with the employees paying for it out of profits. Yeah. So if you're in a hurry to get your money, probably or maybe employee ownership isn't the right way to go unless the employees are prepared to come up with the equity or take on debt. But if you are quite relaxed about getting your money perhaps over a 5-year period or something like that, and you look as if you're still young enough, you want to still be involved in the business.
Oh, I want to be still involved in business one way or another.
Even in this business for a while as well, to just make sure that hand-holding stage is, goes smoothly, then, that can work very well. And there's businesses of all different sizes in Scotland and elsewhere at the moment going down the employee ownership route. But I would still say it's still very much a kind of minority way of selling your business.
Absolutely. Cool. I want to stick on that selling business part. And we'll dive into the past as well, because all I want to talk about is the different paths that we could have taken in life. But I want to stick on that the selling a business, because most business people who think their business is valuable actually isn't valuable as they might think it is. So if you had to give me your top 3 tips on making sure that your business is in a good place to look at a buyer to even look at, what would your top 3 tips be?
Okay, so I would say the business has got to work without the business owner. Yep. So if the business owner is the person that all decisions have got to be made by her or him, all roads lead to them. People can hardly buy anything or spend any money or make any decisions. Sometimes it's also the new business development. So all the new clients are coming to that business owner, maybe a bit of a charismatic personality, a good salesperson. So how key is the business owner to the success of this business? And actually, if you can design a business that almost works without you, and maybe as an evidence of that, you can take a holiday for a month or 6 weeks and the business still goes on, maybe even does better without you, dare I say it, then you've got a really successful business from that perspective. So that's number 1, I would say. Number 2, the business should be profitable, and the profit should be coming from existing clients, but also new clients. So when I sold my AM bid business, I had recurring revenue that was 80% of the monthly turnover came from existing clients.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And
it's a good business, isn't it?
yes, and probably the profit levels were about 20%. So what that meant was any new clients, it was almost like straight profit for us because all of our costs were covered in, in that 80% of recurring revenue. As well as it being profitable, you want it to be profitable hopefully for several years because they are going to look back a few years, but they're also going to look forward. And as they look forward, they're going to be looking at not just your business, but where does it sit in the market and where's the whole market moving? Because we've all been standing on tectonic plates that are actually, they've shifted more, I would say. I mean, I'm 57. They've shifted more in the last 5 years than probably the 20 or 30 years before that. At least it's felt that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
COVID, Brexit, the Russia-Ukraine situation, the war there, inflation, all the changes of government that there's been, costs, inflation, artificial intelligence.
Yes,
really taken off in the last few years. So they're going to look at all that. So with my bid writing business, I was aware of things like that. I was aware of artificial intelligence had started coming into bidding, and I thought it was a good time for me to sell 2 years ago because I think if I tried to sell it now, the business would probably be worth less.
Got it. Wow.
Because more clients are actually, maybe they are still using the services of bid consultants, but they're using them in a different way. They're maybe using them more for higher level strategic work and some of the routine, let's say the kind of grunt work. You could actually get, maybe not AI to do the whole thing. In fact, I was speaking to...
But definitely put it together and structure it.
I was speaking to an IT support company, actually in East End of Glasgow fairly recently, and they were saying to me, if they get a bid question and it says, describe the stages you would go through to onboard a new IT support client, they just put that into an AI tool and they get 10 main stages and they think, right, well, we don't do that. So maybe we need to, or maybe we don't need to. But here's another stage that we do that's not in here. And so they're actually tweaking it, but they are using AI quite a bit.
Believe it or not, Andrew, we use AI all the time when we're building courses. When we're having a conversation with a customer or a client, normally I'm having the conversation. That's where when you say about the business owner, I can go away on holiday, but I'm still building a lot of our programs. So I'm slowly trying to transition away from that. So if I'm building, I'll record the call and I'll get to transcribe the call that I've just had with a customer or client. And then I put that into ChatGPT and I'll say, based on, or we use another one as well, and I'll say, based on what you know about the Power Within Training Development and our content, and what I'll normally do is I'll post a few of our brochures. Go and create a high-level program that'll allow me to meet the needs of this customer's requests, and it goes away and it brings me back a high level, and then I literally take that, as you said, and I'll go, nah, I don't like that, and that's definitely really powerful. And because I've already got most of the content, the actually building of it is a lot smaller. But what that's doing is it's basically structuring it based on the customer's requirements and what we've already built and created. It's taking it and it's cutting it up. And it's saying, right, for module 1, you want to be talking about this, that meets that need, and it meets that need. And module 2, that's the outcome, and that's the learning outcome. And it's just game changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Game changing.
Now, you did ask me for 3 things.
I did.
So let's give you a third one.
Yes.
And the third one I would say is build your brand. So build the company brand, but build your own personal brand as well. So with the company brand, we went for awards. We went for some of the industry's biggest awards. I actually won for the bid profession. The professional membership body globally gave me their Global Thought Leader of the Year award for bids and proposals. So we also won the best people. We won the best people development in the UK award as well. We beat WSP, a big construction consultancy, and O2 Telefonica in the final of that. So that meant that we had really good people. So yes, it was about me, but it was also about our people as well. And in building that brand, and I built it mainly across LinkedIn.
Yep, absolutely.
But
That's
also
when I first met you was LinkedIn,
but also through a lot of events and a lot of networking. But what that meant was I got 4 different organisations approached me and asked me about considering buying my business.
Wow!
So I didn't advertise my business for sale. I didn't use a business broker. 3 of them progressed to offers. And I was able to make a selection for the company that I believed was the kind of best fit.
Wow, that's fantastic. I want to go back to the build. You actually really have been really, really good at building your brand as well as a business brand, because it was you that I was kind of taken away with initially, the way that you came across in your LinkedIn lives, and it was you, and then AM Bid came after that. Funnily enough, it was you were the almost the brand, and AM Bid came after. That's fair enough, isn't it?
It is fair, and with LinkedIn Live, I actually got one of the first LinkedIn Live licenses. I got the first LinkedIn Live license worldwide for bidding.
Wow.
So nobody else had one. And I then started in July 2020, which was real kind of pandemic time.
I remember it.
And I was doing 2 or 3 a week.
That's right, I
broadcasts, sharing my knowledge, insights. I would interview people as well, get them onto the kind of LinkedIn Live show. And, had some great experiences from that. People following me that I didn't even realize were watching them.
Yeah.
And then they would contact me and say, can we meet you now, or can we arrange a call because we want your business to help us?
Well, it was through your LinkedIn Lives that I first was aware of you. And then that's, remember, I don't know if you remember, you came on and Meet the Experts. So we've got Meet the Experts that we do every month, and you came on and your expertise was about bid writing and building bids. And it's amazing how a lot of people don't appreciate the power of personal brand. Company brand is really important. I mean, is massive, but personal brand can be just as powerful.
Yes, and interestingly, the company that bought my business, they were called HealthBid, and they were only doing bids to the NHS, whereas we were multi-sector.
Yep.
So they wanted to go into multi-sector. So their choice was either to grow organically, which would have taken them a few years, or to buy a business. So that was the motivation for them. But they then changed the business name to Bidding Limited.
Right.
So actually, the AM Bid brand barely exists now. Neither does HealthBid. It is more under Bidding Limited now. So actually, your own personal brand is important as well.
Absolutely.
Because most business owners, or some business owners, are still going to want to have a life after they've sold. They want a business life. Yep. So, I mean, I'm 57, I sold age 56. I'm too young to retire. So
Absolutely.
That's why I went back into, another business. And after the end of a restricted period at the end of June, I'll be able to fully go back into bidding as well.
Wow. So what was I'm a big believer. I could never imagine, this is just a personal thing, I could never imagine retiring, because I love it. I love business. I love it. And I was talking about this in one of the other podcasts about when you understand how to build a business, and you understand how a business runs, and you really understand the numbers and cash flow, and you really get it. I think it's like a blueprint, isn't it? It's like we use this word, I suppose, too often, entrepreneurial mindset, right? But you do build that mindset. You build that ability to, see what other people can't see, do things that other people are already doing, but how you could do it better. We have a different mindset, don't we?
I think that's true, but what I would say has changed for me, I'll be 58 in a few weeks' time now. So what's changed for me is I don't want to go back to the start again.
Yes.
So although I've started Business Sale Basecamp, it's very much a kind of consultancy business. I've got 1 or 2 freelancers that work a little bit with me, but I'm not wanting to go back to having a business where I've got lots of employees on the books, because with AM Bid, we needed nearly £90,000 a month to break even.
Yep.
And that is quite a big monster to feed.
Absolutely. That's exactly where we are running about that right now.
Especially in the ups and downs of, the economy, where actually you can be affected by things completely like COVID, out with your control. Back then, I needed 88,000 a month to break even. March 2020, it dropped suddenly to 46. By August, it was 18.
Wow.
You know, so we had some reserves, but we also made changes very quickly and actually shrunk the business to only needing about 25,000 a month to break even. And we were then able to bounce back from that.
That's very clever, though. You know, and look, that I really, and a lot of people, I suppose, try and ride the wave through it. But at the bottom line is, if you're the business owner, you've got to take those tough decisions, haven't you? You've got to say, do we really need to be spending this money?
Well, I took all the decisions on that on Friday the 13th of March as it happened. So the lockdown was something like the 23rd of March. So even before the lockdown had been announced, we'd friends over in Italy, and they were telling us how things were going. And we thought, you know what, it's coming here. So let's just make the cuts that we need to. It was tough because it was before things like furlough or anything had come in. So it really was tough to make these decisions, but we had to make them. And it actually meant that the business was able to keep going, because I was in that position of, do I do the right thing by the employee? Do I do the right thing by me? Or do I do the right thing by the business? And I thought, I'm going to do the right thing by the business.
Absolutely. It's got to be the decision you make, isn't it? Because you're building, you've probably heard this, you almost feel like it's your baby, don't you? When you've built something up from scratch, you know, you love everything about it. You really do love everything, although we have hard times as well. But you do love everything about that business, and I think I think you've always got to put the business first. Put you first sometimes as well, I've got to say. But you've got to be constantly thinking about the business. I mean, for example, so my business partner, also my wife, handles our finances. And basically, if I want to hire somebody, I just have to say, can we afford to bring this person on? Here's the salary expectations. Here's what's going to cost to advertise a job. And she just says, yay or nay. Or, no, this month, ask me again at the end of March. That's how well she knows cash flow, because that's critical that a lot of businesses don't get. They're unable to see far enough ahead. And I suppose what I'm saying is that's what you were able to do at the crisis point, is rather than make excuses, the only way for that business to be successful was for you to take tough decisions. That's fair enough.
It's fair enough. I mean, we took a bounce back loan that the government offered, £50,000, but we only took that just in case things got even worse. But we didn't view that. I think some businesses thought this is just like free money, or let's just spend it on maybe marketing or something that, if it had been their own money, they wouldn't have maybe spent as much of that. And we thought, no, let's just keep it. And then after 12 months, we were doing a lot better. We paid it back in full. So, you know, all the time, I also thought about the money as if it was my own to some extent, because it was, basically.
Well, absolutely. I mean, as I said, when it's your business, it's the buck really stops at your feet as a business owner. You know, all the tough decisions come through you. Let's talk about the new business now. So go and give us a wee bit about the new business and what the purpose behind it is, because it's very intriguing, because a lot of people get this so wrong.
Yeah. So what I found is that selling a business is a very lonely place, because most business owners don't want to tell their staff, because if they tell their staff, they think the staff will start leaving, and that can be the case if it's not handled properly. They don't want to tell their customers, of course, because the customers might start to look elsewhere. They don't want to tell their competition, naturally. So it's a lonely place. They can have professional advisors, and there's absolutely a place for lawyers, accountants, tax advisors, wealth management. All these people have their place. Most of them, though, have never sold a business that they owned. So they've never actually experienced these emotions that comes with selling a business. So I thought, first of all, it's a lonely place. So having somebody you can talk to, and I'm on the way to speak to a gentleman in another part of Glasgow straight after this, who's thinking about selling his business. And of course, it's a very confidential meeting that I'm going to be having with him. The next thing is, a lot of business owners aren't aware of what goes on in the due diligence phase. And the due diligence phase is once you've agreed basically a price and exit terms. So you've kind of got the deal, let's say. However, the buyers will usually go into what they call due diligence.
Yes.
A bit like the lawyers do a search if you're selling your house.
Yeah.
But this due diligence is an awful lot more intensive than that. So I was asked for nearly 600 documents as part of the due diligence.
Oh, wow.
So you have to have all your ducks in a row. And what I thought is this is quite similar to bidding, especially in the public sector.
Yeah.
If you're bidding for a public sector contract, especially a large one, there's a lot of hoops that you've got to jump through and have your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And I thought, I've got good experience in preparing for this type of diligence and examination. And the fact I've now been through it myself on selling the business, I've got a good idea of what's being looked for at due diligence. So I can help the business owner in the background, sometimes below the radar, get their business ready for that due diligence phase. Typically, to sell a business, even if you've got an interested buyer, will often take 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
I managed it in 4 because I had everything ready beforehand.
Yeah.
But at the same time as you're trying to sell your business performance mustn't dip because you're going to be busy dealing with due diligence.
Absolutely, especially if you get 600 documents to get ready.
And if your business performance dips, because all the time the business buyer's wanting to see the latest month's accounts, they're wanting to see the bank statements, etc. So they know what's going on. And if they see it dipping, you're going to experience what's called a price chip. And a price chip is, oh, this is not quite what we thought we were buying.
Right, okay.
So we're going to offer you, at the last minute, a wee bit less. You think that you've got a good deal. You think you're selling your business. You're getting all set to sell. And then suddenly they offer you maybe 10, 20% less. You've got a decision then.
That's naughty.
It is. But they'll say things have changed.
Yes.
And it's because maybe your performance has dipped.
Yeah.
Or because your due diligence, things don't exactly stack up. There's gaps in it. So they now feel, oh, we're actually taking a wee bit of a risk here.
Sure.
So give you an example. I was speaking to somebody recently. They said, we've got a great business and great turnover, great business. I said, where's it coming from? They said, well, most of it's from a single client.
Oh, dear.
Exactly my thoughts. I said, have you got a contract? No, we don't need to worry about that. We've been doing it for 10 years for them.
I'll repeat it. Oh, dear.
That's even bigger. I said, look, all you need is that business to be sold, the people you're dealing with to change, something to go wrong in the relationship, somebody else to come and make them, all these things that you know could happen.
Absolutely could happen.
And your business goes out the door because can you really run a business the size you've got on 20% of the income? It's going to be a very different thing. So my advice to them was, yes, you maybe need to get a contract, but you also, even more importantly, need to diversify.
Absolutely.
And get some more clients in. A lot of businesses as well end up getting less than they think. I mean, I'm looking at a valuation just now of a business. They've had it professionally valued by an accountant, but their salaries, the two business owners' salaries are £12,500 each because they're taking all their money in dividends.
Yeah.
But the dividends are coming out of the profits.
Yes, absolutely.
But the accountant has valued the business based on the profits. And he said, well, the new owners won't need to take these dividends. That's true, but they'll still need to do the work.
Absolutely.
So they've got
still want to paid for it.
Yeah, and they've got the work that is attached to running that business has still got to be done by somebody. So that's got to be priced in. So there's a lot of people, I would say a lot of business owners need a reality check on the valuation of the business.
Absolutely.
Because they've got a mate who sold the business for 10 million. So that means theirs is worth more or less. So it's nothing to do with their mate's business, what theirs is valued at.
Absolutely. Because there's loads of factors. There's like IP, systems and processes. There's loads of factors come into selling a business. That's probably one thing I think in the very early on in our business journey is I always understood that for my business to be worth anything, first of all, as you said, it can't be all about me. Right? So it can't be the James Fleming show. Number two, we've got IP that we own it, right? So it's ours, it's our content, it's us. You know, we've got systems and processes in place so that I actually could go on a holiday for a month and the business just keeps going because there's a process and there's a system and there's CRMs and there's a sales process that's all automated. A lot of those things are really, I would say, critical if you're looking to sell a business as well, because I think what I'm trying to say, the more you've got under the umbrella of the package, the more profitable your business would be. Is that fair enough?
Definitely. And you know what? Right from the very first series of Dragon's Den, I've been a huge fan of Dragon's Den.
Oh, no, I love it.
Yeah. So I just love it, you know, and all the different dragons and what they bring to it. And a lot of the kind of questioning that they put people through, that is not dissimilar to what happens in a business sale environment.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, business owners can do a lot worse. I mean, I know some business owners that say, oh, we don't bother with that, it's just a telly. I said, no, it's more than that. You can actually learn a lot. And I would say I learned a huge amount in business from that, but also from mentors across the years as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, attending events and reading books, you know, and listening to podcasts. I think podcasts are great that you've got this podcast. There's so many podcasts that you can listen to. So
absolutely.
Time that was maybe walking in the gym or driving that was really like wasted time before can now actually be used.
Andrew, that's exactly what I do. Every day, every 6 days a week, me and my business partner, who's also my wife, we get up at 4:20 every morning, and if we go for a walk every morning, hair, rain, sun, sleep, and we put a podcast or an audiobook. And our goal is always, when we come back, we always take something. Either we learned that we can add to the business, or something that we've learned that we could take away, or some kind of learning lesson. Even books that I've listened to. I'm a huge audiobook person, podcaster, listener, and there's always something. Even though the book might be absolutely horrendous, I'll always find something.
And you maybe listen to this anyway, maybe you've been on it, but there's the Go Radio Business Show.
I'm about to go on it, believe it or not.
That's amazing. Yeah. So I was on it about 18 months ago with Sir Tom Hunter and Lord Hockey. It's very near here in the Gorbals, you know, the Go Radio studio. And I love that. It comes out every Sunday. And you can listen to it anytime you want.
By the way, one of the questions I'm going to ask you is probably right up your street, because one of the questions that I'm going to ask them is, so I'm a big believer in reinvesting in my business, right? So we take a lot of our profits and we invest in new systems and we upgrade. We've got our own coaching portal that we own and we designed and developed and owned. And I'm constantly taking our profits and reinvesting in the business and our people and our systems and our processes. And my question is, at what point do you go, right, let's start banking some of this profit? Let's start, rather than constantly spending, because you're always thinking, oh, corporation tax, and if I spend a wee bit more. So at what point, the question I'm going to ask you, at what point do I go, right, let's start banking? Let's start building a bigger pot, if you will, of profitability in the business, so that we're kind of sitting there with shareholder funds of $500,000 or whatever it may be. At what point? Do you know what I mean? Because I don't know that answer.
So I'll give you my take, but
this will be interesting.
Going to Tom and Willie, they've got far more experience, so you'll get a much more comprehensive answer. So I invested probably the thick end of about £200,000 in a digital training platform for public sector bid writing, and it was called Ultimate Tender Coach. And so that was across a couple of years, invested quite a lot of money in that.
I remember it.
Yeah. So interestingly, I wouldn't have said at the point that I sold the business, I had even recouped the money that I'd spent.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. However, the person that bought the business, he said it was a digital training product that really attracted him to the business.
I thought that because it was really good.
Yes.
I thought that because even the site and everything was so cool. Yeah. And it was almost like a coaching, mentoring platform as well as an automated system, wasn't it?
That's right.
Aye.
So although we didn't make our money back on it, we certainly did when it came to business sale.
Yeah.
So, and it was just the knowledge that it was that had got his attention, because primarily he's somebody that builds digital businesses.
Right.
So that's why it was so interesting to him.
So it's worth it as long as you've got, you understand what that might look like.
I think be clear on what you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
I think take external opinions on how valuable is this to the market.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that's good for you and your business and makes sense in your business, but could somebody else, how replicable is it? How interested are they in it? But then there's the unknown. Which for me was, I didn't know that it was going to be that, even more than
got the person at the table,
even more than the Andrew Morrison or the AM bid brand. It was actually the ultimate tender coach that piqued his interest.
Wow, that's amazing. That absolutely amazing. And we built our own. So generally, when I build something, it's always to make something easier. Whether it's a better experience for the customer or the client, or a better experience for your internal staff. I always, anytime we're investing, we're always thinking about how do we make it better? How do we improve? How do we make that customer journey easier? We've got our own learning management system. We built our own coaching portal, and it was always built out of I remember in the early days when I used to do business coaching. I'm a terrible business coach, by the way, because everything's black or white. It's, you said you were going to do it. If you don't do it, me and you don't have much to talk about. I'm that kind of coach, and a lot of people don't like that. So I was the greatest coach in the world. Anyway, and I always remember the time that it took. So let's say, we're meeting up for a session, and the time I read my notes and go back and go through everything we talked about the last few months and what the plans were for the next month, it would take me hours, right? 2-3 hours. And then after I finished, it would take me about another hour or so to catch up my notes and capture everything on the system. And I'm thinking, there's got to be an easier way to do this. That's like, I'm getting paid for, say, 2 hours, right? But I'm actually spending like 5 hours. Like, there's got to be an easier way of doing this. So I thought, well, why don't I build a coaching platform that as we're having a conversation, the client's online, I'm online, it's all getting typed in as we're speaking, it's all being recorded, they can get a copy of the recording. So your system captures all their goals, it captures their vision, their values, their belief systems on one system, and their goals, and they can drag it. We've got a wee thing where they drag it along, and it says, 50% complete, 70% complete. Then we've got an algorithm built in, then it shows them what months that they've, it shows them over the months and what months they've been doing really well and months have not done so well. I mean, like holistically. And it was built out of the amount of time that it was costing me and my staff to coach somebody. And I'm thinking, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And that's where the investment thing comes. But I'm always like, as I just said to you, where is that tipping point? When do you stop? Where do you stop saying, right, I've invested a lot into my business. It's now time to start building up those shareholder funds.
Yeah, and what I've got as well in Business Sale Basecamp is I've got a service where I go and I give 90 minutes. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer than that, but basically 90 minutes. And I give a kind of evaluation of the state of business sale readiness. I do that for...
Maybe we need to have a chat then.
And I do that for £495.
That's fantastic.
But it just gives an external view because the business owners themselves, they're too close to it.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. We're very, very close. So sometimes when you're a business owner, you can't see the wood for the trees because you are so close, because it means so much to you. Luckily, over the last probably 18 months, I've been able to slowly take a step back. So there's some days I actually feel like I've not really done much today.
That's good.
That's why I'm big in new. I've really taken my personal brand. This kind of 2025 is really about James and the personal brand.
But these can also be creative days, because if you're too busy,
I do use them for creative days now.
Yeah, because if you're too busy, you're not going to be creative at the same time.
Absolutely.
Because if you've got that bit of time and space and thinking time, then good things and ideas can happen.
Well, that's where it's days like that I create, right, okay, my video content. So I'll think, okay, so I've got a spare 2 or 3 hours. So I'll go in and go, okay, what do I want to say? Why do I want to say it? And then I start writing all my stuff down, and then I got the camera set up and I go, right. And I maybe do 20 videos, really short, kind of 60-second videos. And I talk about something specific. And I use that time for that because I'm fortunate now. I suppose that I've built and this is another thing, a really good team around me. We've now got a really, really strong team where we have probably several people who could walk right into the role of managing director, which is quite a good feeling for me. And another thing I love, Andrew, I don't know if you experienced this with your teams. I know you had a really good relationship with your team in AM Bid, is you trust them. I actually trust them. They've got my back. Do you know that way?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And, what I found even with that is because the team members had been involved in creating the company's values.
Yeah.
What it meant was sometimes occasionally, recruitment's a difficult thing. It doesn't always work. So sometimes somebody new would come into the team. And if that person wasn't living the values, it might be they were living the values in the Edinburgh office, for the few hours a week that I was in there, but the rest of the time they weren't.
Yeah.
The team would speak to me, say, this person, they're not living the values. We don't like working with them. So we'd have a chat with the person. We would try and see if there was any change could be made.
Yep.
In some cases, we had to get external counselling because the person was dealing with issues, maybe from their past.
Yep.
But if it became clear that they were determined not to live the values, then we would sometimes have to exit people. Yeah. And that is healthy, actually, to do that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I was talking about this in one of the other podcasts. The team that I had, or we put together, I keep saying the business, the team that we put together to take the business to 1 million wasn't the same team that's taking it to 2 million. That was a hard pill to swallow. So last April, I think it was 1.3 or something we hit last April, and I'm thinking, right, double revenue, I'm going for it. But I didn't have the right team in place, and I didn't know that until I started not living some of my own values. I was getting under a lot of pressure, and I was starting to point fingers and place blame. And it was actually one of my employees that phoned me up, and they started the conversation with, James, I might know of a job at the end of this conversation, but you need to listen. And what a self-reflection I had. I was like, whoa, how did that happen? That way. How did that happen? I was starting to change the culture in the business and everything, and I wasn't even aware, because the team that I had weren't the right team to take the business to the next, the 2 million. We didn't have the right people in the business, and that was a hard pill, the self-reflection. Really hard.
Yeah, and I think for me, actually, if I had taken the business further on, I wasn't the right person. So now it wasn't the team that weren't the right people to take it on. It was me, because I was sitting, as I say, when I sold the business, I was 56. I really don't like debt.
Yep.
So I felt happy with reserves.
Yep.
And to actually go into maybe making it bigger would have involved taking on some debt or giving away some of the equity. I didn't want to do that either. So I realised I was probably limiting the business a bit as well, just by my own self-limiting beliefs, let's say. But it was very much from choice.
Absolutely.
I was in my mid-50s. I didn't want to be in a situation of debt. So therefore, I was instead wanting to exit, realising that exiting, somebody else is going to take it on to the next stage and probably do it better than I would have done it.
Yeah, willing to take bigger risks, probably. Correct. Yeah. It's a hard realisation for me that point. But do you know something? It made me a better person. See, having that I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn about exactly what I went through. It was a tough self-reflection. It really was, having to actually go, oh my God, is that who I'm becoming? Because I'm trying to drive the business, because I'm going to be slightly corny here. Vision. I'm a huge believer in having a really, really clear vision about what you're creating, why you're creating it, what does it matter to the world out there. And it might sound corny, but make the world a better place. Like I'm a huge believer, and that's what I'm trying to achieve through what we're doing, whether it's empowering women leaders or whatever it may be. And I get taken away with my drive to build a business, and I ignored the warning signs. I didn't see it until somebody had to come and say to me, James.
Yeah, but you had created the environment where that person felt comfortable to do that.
Yes.
And even at the risk they thought of their own job. And that's a big risk for most people, because, you know, suddenly being without an income is difficult. But you create an environment where the person probably, although they prefaced it by saying I might be without a job, they probably knew you well enough and knew your values that they were actually on reasonably safe ground, telling you what was an inconvenient truth, but one you needed to hear.
One I definitely needed to hear. Do you know the really weird thing is, I see deep down inside, I kind of knew, right? I was kidding myself on, right? Because I kind of knew, Andrew. I could feel it, and I could hear myself speaking, and I'm like, why am I speaking like that? Why am I getting annoyed and angry? Why am I dictating? I was becoming this.
It was stress.
I've been always one of those people that I don't get stressed. But that's exactly what it is. And actually, my dad had said to me, by the way, you're stressed. And I'm like, I'm no stressed. And he's like, that's stress.
Yes.
He says, that's exactly what that is. That's what you're going through. And but what, it made me a different person, changed me. When I say changed me, I was able to go back to the James that started the business and why I started the business, and breathe and step back and think, okay, here's where my biggest challenges are. So I've now brought people into business who are more experienced than me. You know, I've done bigger things than me in business before, and I now take advice for them. And that's a great place to be in. You know, that it's really, really comfortable to speak to Nikki or speak to Omita or speak to Stuart, where these are some of our team members, and they advise you, and it's a really nice position to be in. And I think, as you said, the culture that we've created is we allow people to have those conversations. We allow people to call it bullshit.
Yes.
You know, we almost have like an open forum. It's done it's all we've always told it. Let's speak up if something's not going to plan or something we're not happy about, but do it in a respectful way. You know, that way, because I never want to lose that. I really never want to lose that. So I want to go back to some of your early years. So there must have been times, Andrew, right, that things didn't go to plan, right? Because most business people always we like to tell about all the great things, but there's been a lot of hard days in there, a lot of tears and snot days in there in those early days. What was that like?
Yeah, so at different points there has been, and I think I've tried to take learnings from them. So when I worked in local government, I was working my way up the council, working at West Lothian Council, getting promotions. There was a restructure, and there was going to be more senior jobs, but less of them. And I thought, well, I'm doing well. I had really good figures. People liked me. Everyone was going in the right direction, but I never got one of these promoted jobs. And it was because somebody had been in the council longer than me. And that's literally 20 years ago what it was like.
Yeah.
It was your turn.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my turn.
Yeah.
And that was it, you know. So I thought, I need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And what I did was I took on more responsibility. Didn't get any more money, but took on more team management, managed 3 big teams for a year. And that got me out, got me the experience to get another job. And then from the other job, then an opportunity came up to move into the private sector.
Yep.
And that was a big risk because my background was all public sector.
Yep.
And it was a big risk to go into the private sector.
Because I've got a certain way of working in the public sector.
Yeah.
It's a different ball game for private.
And I would say initially it was difficult because I was a public sector manager, now managing people working in the private sector who'd never worked in the public sector.
Yeah.
But we were delivering a big public sector contract for the City of Edinburgh Council. Right. So that was where the public sector experience kind of came in. But I wouldn't say it was easy in these early stages. I had a redundancy as well after 5 years in that role. And I was going to then set up my bid consultancy business.
Right.
So what I did was I spoke to some friends, and the company that I worked for, that I was basically kind of redundant, made redundant from, was called Orchard and Shipman. They were property managers.
Mm-hmm.
But my friends said, most people have never heard of them. And actually, where you've worked when you start a business as a consultant, where you've worked is going to be your calling card.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to go, don't start a business just now. Instead, go to a big business and get experience with them.
Yep.
And get that on your CV, as
Got
it
it.
were. So that's why I went to British Gas.
Got it.
And at the time, one of the country's biggest, companies.
Yeah.
I managed 5 national bid teams. I won their Entrepreneurial Spirit of the Year award. And I decided, right, after a few years there, now's the time to launch my business. So I started the business then. But that was scary as well, because, I started the business, I had no clients. You're starting from complete scratch. First customer actually was somebody in East End of Glasgow, believe it or not. And he said...
Recurring theme here with East End of Glasgow.
There is. And he said to me, I'm going to get you just now because you're starting, because you're cheap. I'll get you a bit cheaper because you're starting. I said, I'll do that for 3 months for you.
Yeah.
I said, but after that, I'm putting my price up to the rate it should be. He said, well, let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
So I did some work with him. It was a few days a month for 3 months. At the end of 3 months, I put my price up. He said, I'm not giving you any more work. He said, I'm not paying that higher price. I said, okay, but we'll have to part ways.
Mm-hmm.
He said, will you not stay at the lower price? I said, no. I had no work at that point, but I've stayed true to my values.
Absolutely. Love it.
So
I love it.
I knew what I was worth. So then somebody I used to work with in British Gas, he'd moved into the water sector.
Mm-hmm.
And he was working with a water industry company, one of the big water companies in England. And he phoned me. He says they're looking for somebody to help with their bids because they're moving into a new sector to do with, water retail. And they're looking for, bid specialist. And he said, I've told them about you. Is that okay? I said, yeah, that's fine. So he said, you'll go and meet this guy that's the head of Scotland. You'll go and meet him. I said, okay. So went to meet this guy, and it was, I'll never forget it. It was December 2014. So I was only in month 3 of my business. At the same time as the company in Glasgow had said, I'm not going to use you anymore because you're putting your price up. And it was snowing. I had a rear-wheel drive car and everything. It just wasn't very safe. But I went right along the city bypass, met in a hotel, and the guy said to me, you're exactly what I need. So I want to offer you 5 days a week as a consultant for 2 years. Now, I had no income coming in, but I knew that I wanted to start a business that was going to be multi-sector, that would have offices, would have staff.
Yep.
It was not going to be me working somewhere 5 days a week for 2 years.
Yep.
So I said, no, I can't do that.
It's another very brave decision.
So he said, what can you do? I said, 2 days a week for 2 years. Because I was just about to take on some staff as well.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't have much work for them, but I was going to take on staff. I thought I'm going to take on young staff that I can train
them up.
And they're cheap as well in the early days, but I'll train them. So I need time to do that. So he said, okay, 2 years, 2 days a week. And I'd said to him what my daily rate was, the same rate the company in Glasgow wouldn't pay. And he said, okay, but he said, I need a discount now because it's 2 years. I'm giving you a contract for 2 years. I said, there's no discount. I mean, my heart was in my mouth. I said, there's no discount. I said, but what I'll guarantee you is I won't put the prices up for 2 years. But at the end of 2 years, I will put the price up. He said, because I need you, you've got a deal. So that was me. And that
brave. That was brave, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's knowing your worth as well, I suppose, really, isn't it?
It is, but there was always a chance that he could have said no, or somebody in his head office down south might have, basically put a black line through the deal. Who knows? So, but I stayed true to myself, got the gig, ended up staying there 2.5 years. In the last 6 months, was actually the higher rate. And it came to an end by mutual agreement, because at that time my business was a lot bigger and I didn't really have 2 days a week to give them. So they were able to get somebody more local for them down south.
Oh, and then I suppose it just grew and grew. Was it a conscious decision? You mentioned that you were bringing on staff in the early days. Was it a conscious decision about what you built? Like, did you have that? We're going to go back to the vision part. Did you kind of have an idea exactly what you were trying to build and why?
Yes, I knew I was going to build something that was going to be a multi-sector bid consultancy. It was going to work without me, and I was going to sell within 8 to 10 years. And I sold it 8 years, 9 months.
Wow, that's what you call a vision. Do you know, I think it's funny, call it the universe, call it law of attraction, call it what you will. It's really funny when you really absolutely believe with everything inside of you, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you have a really clear vision. The universe is a way of just showing you the path, doesn't it?
Yeah, but every decision I took, every major decision, was always seen through the lens of, how is this going to affect my business valuation?
Yes.
So I'll give you an example. So we started off, we were all remote working, but I lost 3 really good young members of staff. And the reason for each one of these leaving was the same reason. It was, we don't want to just be sitting working at home.
Yeah,
they were young, they were in their mid-20s.
I feel that, yeah.
We said we want an office. I didn't need an office. I'd been through probably 30 years working in offices. I didn't need an office, but I did need one for them. And believe it or not, they said, we want to learn from you, so we need you there some of the time as well. So that was fine. So I then saw that WeWork were moving into Scotland, and they were going to be moving into George Street in Edinburgh, and they took on this 6th-floor massive office, amazing roof terrace, views of the castle and the city, and there was all kinds of things going on there. So there was a barista, so there was free coffee all day, there was free drink at nights, beers, Prosecco's.
Wow.
There was everybody that was opening anything new in Edinburgh would always want to come there, because there was 600 people working there for all different companies. And they'd want to come and meet mainly all these young people that were going to the bars and wanting to try the new gin and the new yoga course or whatever it was. So it was just a great vibe. So I thought, right, I'm going to go there. So took some of my team with me. We went to look at it. And I was offered, we're going to take a 6-person office. And I was offered it at 2 years. And it was going to be £2,000 a month. Or £2,500 a month, and you could break at a month's notice. I thought the new owners might not want that office, even though I was nowhere near selling. I took it £2,000 a month. Sorry, £2,500. So paid more. So as I could get an early break.
If you needed it.
6 months later, COVID happened. So of course we came out on the break.
Wow.
Came out for 18 months and then went back in.
Wow. That was a scary time. We talked about that earlier, COVID. That was a really scary time for a lot of businesses. I remember it was Friday the 27th of March. And up until this point, all my business was face-to-face, like in hotels or business owners' premises. And I remember standing in our home office, right? And I'm a big goal setter, right? Huge goal setter. And I'm looking at all my goals, and I'm looking at all the business, and I'm looking at all I had 180 grand's worth of business written up for the next few months. And literally day after day after day, cancel. And I remember standing and I was in tears, and I'm looking at the board, and I'm like, everything it's gone. And my wife said, James, the people are still there. We just need to look at a different way of doing business. And that was the day I decided to go digital. Yeah. And we never looked back.
And it was that pivot, wasn't it?
It was. We went digital, and we doubled our revenue during COVID and we made the previous year. So from April to September, we doubled our revenue than what we made the year before. And we never looked back. Never looked back. Listen, Andrew, we're almost getting to the end. So if anybody's looking for advice, support on and getting, understanding if their business is ready, which I'll be one of them, understanding how do they get in contact? They will be on this podcast, so there'll be links on in the podcast.
Yeah, but just reach out to me. Reach out via LinkedIn, for example, or email me, andrew@businesssalebasecamp.com. LinkedIn's the best place to get me, though. Just hit me with a direct message there.
Brilliant.
And happy to have free 30-minute intro calls with people, and then discuss their needs, and then see if there is a fit with the services I'm able to provide. Amazing.
Listen, Andrew, it's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to get your insights, and it's fantastic just to see your journey and how strategic you've been through that whole process, because a lot of business owners don't do that. They almost throw the spaghetti at the wall and hope something sticks, don't they? So anyway, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much for coming along to Success or Excuses podcast. Thank you.
Thanks very much, James.